Let's finish up with something a bit easier going, shall we? State of relationships, marriages, and living alone in the United States. So apparently, according to the Census Bureau, we are in a downturn when it comes to married couples. Big downturn. So you see here in 1940, over 70, almost 80% of households were married. Right? Almost 80%. Good number. See the 50s come, see the 60s get here. This is like 62, still at 73. And what happens is 70 seems to hit, and that's when, of course, what? Oh, that's right. Modern leftism really started popping its ugly head, right? The communists started popping up in the colleges, and the attack on the nuclear family really started to begin. And it just goes down. It goes down. It goes down. It goes down. All the way till now, where we're at less than half of households in this country are married couples. Now, here's the thing. Some people say, what does this really matter? People live together now longer. Me and my wife, we lived together before we were married. It is what it is. It's 2 years before we actually got married. I think we got engaged after about like 1 year, and then the second year is when we actually got married. And so I get it, people do wait a bit longer. But we're looking at under 50% rates of marriage. And it's funny, when you look at things about how to be financially set, one of the number one things you can do is get married and have a family. And that's really counterintuitive, right? Have kids, well, that's going to cost you so much more money. Listen, I can say as someone who's had a kid, I've become more responsible and more financially savvy now that I have a kid than I was before. Same thing goes with my wife, right? We've gotten better financially since we've had a kid. We've been better financially since we got actually married, because it almost forces you to be responsible in a way, right? And once you really start realizing what's really important in life, and once you start realizing that, your spouse and your kids, they're the real things when it comes to, what is the meaning of life, they mean so much more than any of those other bullshit that you were doing before. Right? Did I enjoy doing a lot of things I did when I was single? Hell yeah. I mean, let's be honest. Do they even remotely compare to the happiness I have now that I'm married and have a kid? Not even remotely. They're not even on the same planet at this point, right? They are so far apart. They are so far apart. But it's counterintuitive to say, get married, have kids, and you will be more financially stable. But it's the truth. For one, obviously, typically you're kind of combining your income and you're more set together, and you can actually help make decisions. Two minds thinking towards one purpose is probably going to get you a better outcome in most situations. You have someone you can bounce ideas off of. When you have a kid, you're forced to start really looking at, what do I really need? What do I not need? And you start building up your wealth from there. So marriage is very important. Marriage is extremely important. When it comes to raising kids, we know the biggest thing to keep kids out of jail is to have a two-parent household. So again, marriage is extraordinarily important. And we're about to look at some statistics here on marriage that really explain a lot when it comes to different segments of the population encountering different problems. So, right over here, both men and women are marrying later in life. Based on census data compiled since 1890, the median age of first marriages were at their youngest in 1956, just over 22 for men and 20 for women. That's probably a good age for most people to get married, to be honest. It really is. I got married when I was 26, so I got married a little late. But yeah, I think 22 for men, 20 for women, that's a good number. And you see, of course, men being older than women, very common. In 2019, those figures were at their oldest for over 30 for men and over 28 for women. Over 30 for men. I know there's some 30-year-olds out there right now are probably thinking, well, yeah, I don't want to get married yet. Listen, grow the fuck up. All right, get married. Now, if you're having a hard time finding a woman, I understand that. And same thing if you're a woman having a hard time finding a man. Listen, I get it. That means you probably need to work on yourself and actually improving in some way. Because guess what? If my wife met me just like a year earlier than she did, there's no way we would have ever gone out, because I was a totally different person at that point and had yet to even begin to get my life together. Work on yourself. Work on yourself. Go ahead out there and get married, all right? Go to a church. Find someone who has, even if you're not even religious, man, just go to it. If you're not religious, there's no harm, right? Find a religious person because they want to get married typically, all right? Go out there, find someone who wants to get married, 30 years old. I mean, if you have a kid, man, really think about that. If you get married at 30 and then have a kid when you're 32, when your kid turns 21, you're going to be in your 50s. In your 50s, man. Don't you want to do stuff with your kid? Me and my dad, for his 50th birthday, we went and hiked the Grand Canyon. Right? Now, we did some crazy stuff. And it's been fun. It's been fun that when I hit 21, going to Vegas with him and stuff like that, right? Like, I've been able to do so much with my dad because he was really young when he had me. And same thing, of course, with my mom. You know, they were both pretty young when they had me. They were in their early 20s. And it meant that, you know, as I got older, they were able to do so many different things. They were able to go hiking, go fishing, go hunting, do all these stuff because, you know, they still had that energy. They were still very young, and they're still pretty young. And it's allowed us to do so much. If you wait this long to get married, listen, for one, if you're a woman, you're going to have a hard time having kids. Let's be real, all right? When you're 30, most of your eggs are all used up. I'm telling you, you want to have kids. For men, guys, even if you say I can have kids at any age, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because you're going to want to you want to be able to keep up with your children. All right, you're going to want to have fun with it. You want to play ball with them and stuff like that. All right, you're going to want to do a lot of that kind of stuff. You got to get married young. You got to have kids young. So we see here Americans getting married later in life for their first marriage, and you see again the charts right here. Now here's where it gets interesting. How do marriage rates compare by gender, race, and ethnicity? Marriage rates have declined across races and ethnicities, but the trend is more pronounced in some. Marriage rates for white, black, Hispanic Americans have fallen 7, 8, and 11 percentage points respectively since 1990, while the Asian Americans have remained around 61. Now, here's the interesting thing. Now, for one, it's interesting the fact we didn't even register Hispanics or Asians until like the 1990s. That's kind of funny to me. But you see here, around the 50s and 60s, you know, they were off, but they're around still somewhat the same, right? Like all men, again, 70%. White men over 70. And you see it continue. And what's interesting here is, you know, before we looked at the chart, in the 70s where we had that loud, you know, that huge jump down, you know, just shot down. That's not really the case for white men here. It's actually more of a case for the black community, which what started happening around the 80s and 90s. What happened during all this time? The war on poverty. The war on poverty, which we know has done nothing but destroy the black community. And we've done more stuff too. Let's face it. We've screwed over the black community in a lot of ways. Listen, the government has the government is to blame for a lot of the problems happening in the black community. When they have sat there and done things, of course, like the war on drugs, which have been an utter failure, right? The way they handle crime, let's face it, has been an utter failure. The way that they've encouraged people not to get married and encouraged them to let the government be, you know, basically be their baby daddy, that affects them tremendously. That's going to affect them tremendously. So I know some people go, well, what happened here? What happened was the government tried to help the black community, and in doing so, practically destroyed them, right? They pushed them away from traditional values, which we know work. And the best way you see is with the Asian population here, right? So you see it kind of jumps around a lot. And I wonder if that just has to do with the way census data is gathered for such a small group in America. But right now, they're at the highest at 61% in the country for 2020 or 2021. Who is the most successful people in the country? It isn't white people. Even though we're the majority, it's not us white people. It's Asians. They have the highest grades on average when it comes to schools. They have some of the highest income levels for families. And a big part of this is because they still have very traditional families, very traditional values. You know, work hard, you know, get married at a pretty young age typically as well. And you know, with these traditional values, and the nuclear family does a lot of benefit. And you see it here with the Asian community, which has the highest marriage rate and has the best, statistically, are doing the best in the country. You know, white men are right below here, which again, when you look at statistics for who's usually, you know, prospering the most in this country, that's kind of in order. Now, this kind of surprised me. Hispanic men, y'all are Catholics, aren't? a lot of you are just like a bunch of Catholics over there in South America. That's what I always was told. Central and South America is filled with Catholics. Aren't y'all told to like get married and have like tons and tons and tons of kids? And to be honest, my personal experience with most Hispanic families is that they're extremely family orientated. It's one of the things I usually love about my friends who are Hispanic is that they are very, very, very heavily family orientated. So I'll be honest, that number really surprises me, seeing it that low. But again, when you look at income brackets and things like that, it falls in line. And then you have the black community down here, 36.8%. And a big part of it is not, a lot of people want to try to just put all the blame on the black community. And let's face it, there's some blame for the individuals, obviously. They live in areas where the politicians in charge use them. Absolutely, Candace Owens, I think Candace Owens is a little crazy at times, to be honest, but she isn't entirely wrong when she talks about the Democrats are still the plantation owners currently, right? They're just trying to cultivate black people into votes at this point. And they use it by keeping them in perpetual poverty. So they always have something they can say, oh, we'll help you. We're going to get you out. We're going to get you out. Those nasty, but they're not going to help you. We'll help you. And you keep them impoverished to make sure they keep voting and voting and voting for you because you're their savior. You're their savior. That's how Democrats operate. Because where are most people who are, where is the majority of the black population? They're in cities, which are run by Democrats. Chicago's been run by Democrats for almost 100 years at this point. Same thing for Detroit. All these cities are run by heavy, heavy leftists, and you see where it's got them. You see where it's got them. Left-wing ideology pushes out family values. It wants to supplant the family unit with the government. And in places where they've succeeded in doing that, you see marriage rates fall tremendously. And where you see marriage rates fall tremendously, you see higher crime, lower education, and lower income. All right? If you want to be successful, if you want your kids to be successful, get married young, have kids young, and that's really about it. If you're married, you will see generational wealth really start to accumulate. I would also add leave cities personally, but that's just me. And so you have a couple more over here. Black men are the likeliest. Is that a word? Likeliest? Is it? No. Likeliest to never been married. Someone needs a editor here. So you see again the chart for the most part, Asians and whites have kind of right around the same here. Hispanic men pretty high, and then black men at the highest right now. 51% of them have never been married. Really sad, absolutely sad. Black women are less likely to be married than women of other demographics, and they're at 32.4%. That's terrible. It's really terrible to see, and I really do mean it. It is really awful to see because, especially when you can look at the statistics and see that a family union will create prosperity. And you see one group of people who are distancing themselves from the family unit and who the government has gotten involved with to push out the family unit from. It hurts. It hurts. Right? Because that would do more good for the black community than anything else. Having a nuclear family be the common thing in the black community would fix 90% of the problems guaranteed. Is fatherless households are probably the number one problem going on, and frankly, most communities, not just the black community, but even in the white community and the Hispanic community. Not so much, I guess, for the Asian community because they got their nuclear family checked out. They're doing good when it comes to two-parent households over there. But when it comes to most of us, the lack of two-parent households, and you see the trend is still going down on it, that would do more good than anything else you could possibly do. 3 in 10 women have never been married. Just these terrible, terrible statistics you see going on and on and on. How many people are living alone? Currently 11%. I mean, what did you do during COVID, man? Like that had to be torture being by yourself like that. I just can't imagine. Either way, get married, people, man. Get married. Thanks so much for watching that clip. If you want to watch the live show, it is Thursdays at 9 o'clock. Again, that is 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But if you don't want to wait that long, we got some other awesome content out there. All you got to do is click on this video over to the right, and it will take you right on to the next one. Either way, thanks so much for watching, and we'll be talking again real soon.